Welcome back to Recap It. Today we are going to recap a 2015 thriller drama movie titled Return to Sender. A traumatized nurse hatches an elaborate revenge scheme against the man who raped her on a blind date. The diabolic takes its course of time and leaves us with inserting plot. But before we begin, please consider subscribing to this channel. Now without wasting any further time, let's begin, shall we? We observe Miranda Wells, a small town nurse, with her companion Nancy as the film begins. "I hear you're going on a blind date," Nancy said. "How are you going to conceal that from me?" She explained to Nancy that it's just a date. She then proceeds to her father's residence in search of her father. Benny, his dog, leapt on her and ripped her clothing. Then her father, Mitchell Wells, arrived and apologized for Benny's actions. They then went to a local restaurant, where they discussed Miranda's plans to sell her house and go to another state. Miranda then exited and proceeded to the washroom, where she was inspecting the dog's damage to her dress. When the waitress arrived, she informed her that someone was choking. Miranda dashed out of the restroom to help the choking man. She used a steak knife and a straw after the Heimlich maneuver failed. Everyone in the restaurant praised her after the man began to breathe. The next day, Miranda cooked and decorated a cake for her friend Nancy's birthday, which she delivered to the restaurant where Nancy and her friends were celebrating. Miranda was getting ready for her blind date the next day. Someone is standing outside her door, she notices. She asked him why he didn't knock when she opened the door. He said that's why I didn't knock when one of her shipments arrived. He offered to carry it into the house for her. "Let me put some clothes on," she said. She dressed herself and requested him to return later. "You are, after all, extremely early." He went to the door and shut it. He turns around and grabs her, attempting to force himself upon her after she asked him why he did that. She attempts to fight him off, but he pins her down and forces himself on her. When the real date arrived, he noticed her door was open and walked in to find Miranda laying on the floor. Miranda was questioned by the police at the hospital about the man who had forced himself onto her, and if she had ever seen him before. When she answered yes, the guy showed up at her place of employment. "William, I thought you were off today," commented one of her coworkers. He explained that he had only come to get his money. He entered the store to retrieve his money. There were cops on the scene, and he was taken into custody. Miranda had a minor tremor in her hands after this and found it difficult to concentrate. She decides to write William a letter in prison, requesting that he visit her, but he refuses to accept her letters. She continues to receive back letters addressed to herself. She continues to write him letters in the hopes that he will one day accept her plea. With her father's support, she began to renovate her home. Her father contacted her at work one day and said something was a little strange and asked if she could look at him. Later that day, she received a message in the mail stating that she had won. She went to see William at the prison, and he apologized to her. Back then, he was completely messed up. Before she went, they had a talk. "William," she inquired, "how's the food in here?" Miranda then went about her daily routine. When she received a letter from William one day, he decided to accept her meal offer. She began to pay frequent visits to William in prison after that. Following the visit, William discovered his roommate reading his letter. He seized him and instructed him not to look through my belongings ever again. After a visit, Miranda's father called her to inform her that Benny had died. She went to console her father and informed him that on her next visit, she would bury Benny. William informed her that he was about to be released on parole. When William returned home, he sent flowers to her place of business before calling to inform her that he was gone. He then requested whether he might visit her at some point. "Yes," she replied. William arrived at her residence the next day. "I noticed she needed help with some porch repairs and volunteered to assist." He saw a hole in the ceiling while mending the porch and remarked, "I need to acquire some paints and fix it tomorrow." So he picked a piece of wood and went to the store to get some paint in the same hue. Miranda's father noticed him and recognized the wood from his daughter's house, so he hurried over to face her right away. He inquired as to why she had hired that monster to work on her home. She informed him that this was the only way for me to reclaim my identity and move on with my life. He became irritated and left the next day. William came to her house and started working on it. She offered him a glass of water. William had an upset stomach later that day and requested if he may go inside and use her bathroom. She told him he was free to return home. "I don't think I'll be able to get home in time," he told her. She consented and escorted him inside. William then awoke in Miranda's basement and inquired about what had occurred. She asked, "Do you honestly think I forget you forced yourself on me?" William is sleepy, so he asked Miranda, "What did you give me?" She spoke the same thing to him as I said to Benny. William began pleading for his life. Miranda then resuscitated him and removed his hand and private parts. Miranda then went to her father's house and told him not to worry, that the relationship was over. This is where the film comes to a close. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, until next time.